Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello, listeners. This is your host, Andy Curry. Welcome to the show today. And I am really excited to have on the line with me James Ware, who has been speaking professionally for 20 years. This content he speaks on is right up my alley. One of them is flexible work. And I'm excited for you to hear that because that's the one's up my alley. I've been doing what he's going to talk about quite a bit. The other one is collaborative leadership and power sharing. James speaks primarily in the U.S. He is based out of California. He has co-authored 4 books, and he has one in the works right now called Your Last Bad Meeting. I love that title. One of the books he co-authored is called Corporate Agility. So anxious to hear about this information. So James, welcome to the program.
Well, thanks very much, Andy. It's a pleasure to be here.
Glad to have you with us, James. Let's talk about your speaking business. When you are talking to groups, you obviously have a lot to teach them. So first of all, who are the groups you're speaking to? Second of all, what is it you're teaching them?
Okay. Well, the groups vary from one profession or one functional area to another. I have not specialized in any particular functional area, but rather I'm really trying to talk to leaders of teams, whether it's product teams, project teams, other sorts of collaborative endeavors. But as you mentioned earlier, a lot of my work, especially in the last decade, has been focused on teaching organizations and their managers how to manage people who aren't in the office every day, flexible work kinds of environments, setting up work from home programs. So I'm really dealing with directors and team leaders, really across functional areas. It depends on the business or the industry, of course, but primarily that. I've also spent a great deal of time the last 4 or 5 years working with professional facilities managers, largely because the workplace is changing so dramatically as a result of technology and as a result of more and more people working outside the office. And so there's a lot of issues and challenges that those particular folks are facing. But again, my focus today is much broader. As you said, it's more about collaborative leadership, power sharing, enabling really meaningful conversations, whether everyone's in the room together or whether they're actually distributed, and dealing with it by conference call or Skype or something like that.
Well, working, from home for office stuff is pretty big now, isn't it?
Yes, it is. And over the last 4 or 5 years, it's just grown very dramatically. I mean, the explosion of mobile technology and just the ability, the capability that we all have to connect with just about anybody and any information from anywhere has really enabled it. And the economic pressures over the last 4 or 5 years have added to this, in that organizations have been looking to downsize their physical facility and encouraging people to work from home or work from a neighborhood co-working facility. That's the other thing that's really happened that has enabled this flexible work environment, has been the really absolute explosion of these co-working operations, where many people from different organizations or a lot of entrepreneurs share a workspace and both have a place close to home so they don't have to commute so much, but also have a community of people to interact with.
I would imagine I can understand some of the challenges, like being able to make sure, like if I had hired somebody and they're working at home, are they really doing the work? Are they scanning the internet for porn, frankly? What are some of the other challenges?
Well, I want to address that one directly, because that is the biggest hesitation that organizations have. And the thing I hear from team leaders and executive leaders more than anything else is, how can I manage them if I can't see them? There is that trust issue. The fact is, and an awful lot of the speaking and the training that I do with organizations is around teaching people how to manage performance and results of work rather than watching over someone and being sure that they're doing X, Y, Z at a given point in time. I was one client organization I've worked with for several years. They're based in the Midwest. I was really delighted that their CEO at one of the initial workshops said, "Look, I don't care where you are when you get the work done or when you do it. If you want to do it at 10 o'clock at night, as long as it's done when we need it done, that's fine." Now, there's also the issue of people being available to their colleagues when they're needed, because an awful lot of work is kind of spontaneous, picking up the phone and calling someone, or in an office walking down the hall to talk to someone. But my clients are finding that it's just as easy to use the phone or use instant messaging or email to connect with people, and you don't need to know even where they are.
So if you're basing it off results, let's say I want them to get items 1 through 5 done, I should have probably a real good idea of how long that should take, shouldn't I?
In most cases, yeah. Yeah. I mean, what I find is so intriguing about this is that the primary way in which a manager and a subordinate reach agreement on the results that need to be accomplished is by talking about it, by setting clear goals and expectations, being clear about a deadline, for example, or at least some level of quality. If it's a financing document or something, that it's complete and that it's available at a given point in time. And I find that just having that conversation creates such a clearer picture of what is needed and what's expected that people become more engaged with the work. My own research and that of others shows that people working from home are typically more productive than people in the office. They're not wasting a lot of time. They tend to work harder. They also, once it's been set up, they tend to be more focused and more engaged with the work, not only because they know what's expected of them, but because the company is essentially saying, "We trust you. We're
Right.
treating you like an adult."
Right.
And people like the opportunity. They like the ability not to have to commute every day. They like it so much that they want to make sure that the privilege doesn't get taken away from them. So they work pretty hard.
Well, I can attest to the commute thing. My commute is about 50 feet every day, if that, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, listen, there are industries obviously that can't do that. Like if you worked in retail, you can't go wait on a customer from your home, for instance. But what are some of the industries that are working from home that are sort of surprising to you, or are there any?
Well, most of my work has been with information-based businesses like insurance companies and financial services companies, and that's not surprising. And in fact, in many cases, there are people in those organizations who've been traveling as part of their job, for a long time. The new thing, actually, one of the surprising things to me has been the success that several of my clients have had with jobs that one would consider where you would expect people need a lot of supervision, like accounts processing or accounts payable or accounting or finance, where there are, I want to be careful how I say this, but lower level jobs, not necessarily fully professional jobs. But those folks are working just as well as higher level folks who have graduate degrees and that sort of thing. And I'm trying to think about industries where it might surprise you. Most of us have heard about like the airline reservation agents and the customer service folks who work from home.
Right.
That's pretty common. In my experience, just about anybody who works in an office can work from home at least part-time. And I don't advocate full-time working from home, by the way. I really believe if you're part of an organization, it is important to have good relationships and ties with your colleagues and with your boss or your subordinate. So most of the companies I work with are enabling people to save that commute time 2 or 3 days a week, but no more than that.
Now, have you worked with companies who, well, like you've heard of Elance and Upwork?
Oh,
correct?
yeah.
So there's a deal like, somebody in my city, for instance, may hire someone from New York and someone in Florida, maybe someone in the Philippines even.
Sure.
So what's different in What are the differences for them when those people couldn't come to work?
Well, and this is part of what I talk about and have written about. It's imperative for the leader of that group to spend more time connecting with people, getting to know them at a personal level, starting a distributed conversation, for example, with a little bit of what's going on in your life or what's happening, just a personal touch. That's part of it. Something else I think is really interesting. One of the financial organizations I worked with a few years ago opened an outsourced customer service operation in South America as opposed to the Philippines or Asia because it put them in the same time zone. So they didn't have to deal with people working at midnight or 2 a.m, and there was a little bit less of a cultural shift and a cultural gap that way.
Okay, interesting. Now, how did you get started speaking? What got you going?
Well, I actually started my career way more than 20 years ago in executive education. I taught at the MBA level for a few years, and then I got into a consulting firm that did a lot of executive education. We ran a lot of workshops. But even more than that, the speaking became a way to market our business and our capabilities. We would participate at conferences. We would put on some of our own conferences where we're not selling prospects, but we're talking about the things we've been learning. And we really viewed it as an educational experience for our clients and our prospects. So I got a lot of time in the saddle, so to speak, that way. And then as I went out on my own, speaking and talking about the issues, not just necessarily the business or trying to sell the business, but speaking about the issues and the things I was seeing became an important part of my business model. I write, I do research, I report on research as well as the experiences, sort of the case studies out of the clients that I work with. And that's a way of spreading the word and becoming more visible and creating credibility as a thought leader.
Yes, credibility is huge.
Yeah.
Now the other thing you do talks on is collaborative leadership and power sharing.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit. What does all that involve?
Well, I realized a couple of years ago that I was thinking back over the work I've been doing with these distributed teams and work from home programs. And I began to realize that one of the reasons I found that so interesting and I was so passionate about it is that it forces, as I said earlier, it forces managers and organizations to start managing their staff on the basis of outcomes, on the basis of performance. And that's essentially starting to treat those staff as if they were adults, which I think in most cases they are. And it requires a more collaborative leadership style. You can't be really autocratic with someone who you can't see and you can't look over their shoulder. And I began to realize that my real passion is about creating corporate cultures and environments in which the inherent talents and the innate skills of everyone in the organization are being tapped into and leveraged, and creating environments that are fun for people and engaging. And sort of like, why can't we create the same feeling in the office that people have when they're working on their own at home? Levels of trust and self-initiative and self-management. And it's become a passion of mine.
Okay. That's so that's very closely tied into your flexible work.
Yeah, it is. It really comes from that. As I said, it's the way I'm responding to how can I manage them if I can't see them, which is what I hear all the time.
Right.
The way you do it is by treating them as adults, letting them know what's expected, and creating a much more collaborative work environment.
Now, your book that you're in the middle of, Your Last Bad Meeting, I love that title. And you have a neat subtitle. Go ahead and say the subtitle.
Okay, it's a mouthful. New Rules and Cool Tools for Corporate Conversations in the Digital Age.
And if you could summarize the book in a few sentences, what would it be about?
Well, it's about collaborative leadership. It's about how to lead effective conversations, primarily in meeting environments. One of the striking statistics that I came across in doing the research for the book, there are over 11 million meetings a day in the United States alone. lots more internationally. And as I say, it's really hard for me to find someone who can't wait to go to their next meeting. Most people I talk to complain about meetings being boring, a waste of time, unproductive. People come out of the meetings not knowing what was decided or if anything was decided and what to do next. And so I'm tackling that as kind of the real world experience. So many people spend so much time in meetings that if we can enhance the quality of those conversations and think of today in this knowledge-based economy we live in, a meeting as a place to draw ideas out and engage in a conversation and be creative and do brainstorming, rather than a meeting being a time for a leader to tell everybody else what to do. I mean, that's part of what's driving all of this. And so given especially distributed meetings, which we were talking about earlier, given tools like Skype and some of the screen sharing programs, whether it's WebEx or GoToMeeting, that enable people to have meaningful, information sharing when they're distributed. Those are some of the tools I'm interested in, but there's a lot of others too that really enable much more collaborative work, even when people are not physically together.
Okay, well, that's great information, James. How can someone get a hold of you should they want to hear you speak or learn more?
Well, I appreciate that question very much, Andy. My website is www.thefutureofwork.net. There's a contact form on the site. People can read my newsletter there. I post weekly on a blog, and I would love to hear from anyone who's interested in or frustrated about some of these kinds of things we've been talking about.
Okay. Well, James, thank you so much for giving us some time and pulling back the curtain so we can take a look into what you're doing. That's really right up my alley, and I know that's up a lot of other people's alley, so thank you for that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you, Andy.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.